So there are two approaches to assessing credibility, and this applies specifically to investigators when you're doing interviews, but it also applies to your decision makers of how you look at how you ask questions, how you interpret answers when you're sitting there listening to cross-examination. You may have the opportunity in your process to ask questions as well as the advisors, however you decide to do it. This applies to both. So the first is an attitude of belief and openness. So in other words, whatever the person tells you, you just take it at face value. You say, okay, it is what it is. And then you go out and investigate. Your job is to take the information and then go out and verify it, go out and corroborate. The second approach is to take this attitude of mistrust. So in other words, you don't believe anyone, you don't believe anything they say until they prove it. Until the evidence proves it, you don't believe it. You mistrust everything. Now, I know investigators who take both one approach or the other. I know people who take the mistrust approach and people who take the openness approach. What I've found is the mistrust approach, I'm thinking of an investigator right now who's really good, an excellent investigator. He takes the mistrust approach. It fits him, it fits his personality, it fits his style, and he has really developed that approach. But for most people and in most situations, the attitude of belief and openness is a much more effective approach. You would have to have a very specific style and personality to make the mistrust work as effectively as the belief and openness could work for the majority of people. So the reason that is, even though both can be worked effectively, I recommend that you go with the belief of openness, and that's because it tends to invite better information. People are naturally inclined to share more with someone who believes what they're saying or who appears to believe what they're saying. You can look at personal experiences. If you are telling someone a story or sharing with them something that happened to you, you're more likely to continue to provide more information if they are open, they're intently listening, and they appear like they believe you. As soon as they start closing off and shaking their head and looking like they don't believe what you're saying, you shut down. You either completely shut down and stop it, or you start embellishing. And we're going to go into that a little more later in the lesson. Your goal as an investigator when you do an interview is to get as much information as possible and the best information possible. You are more likely to get more information and better information if the person you're talking to believes, or that you believe them, that you trust what they're saying. Even if you're listening and you're hearing discrepancies and issues, you can't let that show. So this approach forces you to just take everything. Even though the back of your mind is questioning and arguing, you don't allow that to the forefront. They can never see your thought processes in the back.